My name is Jessica Kay, and I've recovered from compulsive eating. I have been in program for 3.5 years or so. So I came to program through a therapist. And I was kind of, by the time I came to program, I was like at my wit's end. I had no idea what way was up and what way was down. A little bit that finally got me to that space. I mean, sometimes we talk about when we were younger, having issues with food or issues with body, how we looked at our body, maybe body dysmorphia or something of that nature. And yeah, when I was younger, I had a little issues with food. I overate sometimes, and my mom tried to help me with all that type of stuff. And I really did not understand my body or what it was supposed to look like. I compared myself constantly to other people and the way that they ate and the way that they were able to eat things, or in the way their bodies were like, and the way mine was supposed to look like with them. And I had a lot of other, outside things going on with my mental health as well that really was greatly impacted by my food. They're kind of almost hand in hand at times. Whenever I felt down or whatever, food always made me feel better in the beginning, right? So I came to program with a very warped sense of reality, a warped sense of what emotions were and feelings, a warped sense of just my thoughts. I always like to say I was Delulu when it came to anything around my eating, anything around my body image. I came to program, like I said, through a therapist, and I was in therapy, and I'd been in therapy on and off since I was 18, and I was 40 something, beginning of my 40s when I came to program. But I'd been in and out of therapy for years due to mental health issues. And like I said before, it was quickly kind of aligned with my compulsive eating behaviors and then some restricting behaviors later on. So when I came to program, I was pretty much lost, y'all. I remember sitting on my kitchen floor, of all places, and not being able to eat anything because I was terrified of food, and I was with my dog and my cat was crying, and I was like, I don't know what else to do. But before all of that, that time coming, I always thought I had a lot of control over every aspect of my life, including my food choices. I always followed this thought pattern. If you can control it, then it's not going to be a problem, right? So I started trying to manage my food probably as a teenager, well, in college. My mom helped me manage it prior to that because I had some issues with my stomach and stuff. So she helped me with that. But then later on, I started trying to manage it. And I did it like a normal person, okay? I would go work out. I would start eating healthy, right? And I would only be able to do it for so long before life would hit, and I'd have to go, I'd stop doing it because I was upset with something or I got so busy. And so I just stopped taking care of that part, right? And then I would start eating really unhealthy, quote unquote, unhealthy foods that I was telling myself was unhealthy or that I believed was unhealthy. And I would start doing that. And this cycle kind of continued on and on and on. We hear of that a lot about how our cycle first starts, but then as it carries on, it gets worse and worse. It gets progressive, right? I got progressive in my illness. And when I finally got to program, it was pretty severe. So I was in and out, y'all, of the ranges of my compulsive eating behaviors until I was in my mid-30s. And I had just gotten my master's degree. I'm a clinical therapist, and I was also single, well, not married. I lived on my own. I pretty much was involved in my career. I had just come out of some severe mental health issues with my depression. And then my body decided it was done with me. Ended up having some major health issues, major autoimmune disease issues. And I went from being a very vivacious, I say vivacious, but I was very active in the gym, eating relatively healthy at times. I was in a dance troupe. I did Kung Fu. I lifted weights, to basically being able to barely walk and being on bed rest for 10 months, almost losing my hearing. I'm deaf in one ear, and I had multiple surgeries to help with that, all while trying to get my feet in the door with my master's degree to get licensed. So my whole entire world just kind of collapsed. And in that span of time and being sick, I gained a considerable amount of weight, which to me was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. It reminded me of a time when I was in undergrad and I was living at home and it was Christmas. And, we always hear about the freshman 15 or whatever. Back then it didn't matter. But, my mom said, "Oh, you've gained that freshman 15." And I told her, if I ever hit 200 pounds, I'm going to be so upset with me and I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, by the time I was in my 30s, I had hit 200 plus. And that reminded me of that conversation. And I was kind of distraught with myself. And I started pouring myself into trying to figure out and trying to learn about how to heal my body through food, through alternate ways. And I started getting obsessive about what I ate. I started obsessing about like the types of food. I obsessed about, should it be vegan? Should it be keto? Should it be paleo? Should it be autoimmune paleo? I tried so many diets, and between then and coming into program, I never really stuck to them very long because some of them were very hard, but I always thought, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I'll do it one more time. I'll do it one more time. But I was obsessed with food and things around my body and trying to make my body better. My sister, I remember, told me, she said, "Jessica, you're obsessing." And I got so pissed off at her. She says, "Just take your medicine and stop obsessing." And I just got so mad at her. I was like, how can she tell me that I shouldn't obsess about something? I'm not obsessing. I'm just trying to make sure I'm healthy. And I really, really remember that conversation, and it was on the phone, and just like, I believe I hung up on her because I did not want to hear what she had to say, because her autoimmune was not as bad as mine. I was comparing even then whose autoimmune was worse. Well, hers is not autoimmune, but mine was a type of autoimmune to what she had. And I was just comparing that. And I was like, everybody else can eat the way that I want to eat, or they can go work out the way I want to work out. I remember with every friggin' diet, or let me quote unquote, way of eating, as I like to start calling it, people around me had to switch up what was available in their house. So I remember one year for my birthday, I was on this no sugar, no gluten, all of these things, like, right. And so they had mainly like steak or whatever, but instead of a cake for my birthday, they gave me watermelon. It's like they made a watermelon cake, went out of their way to try to make a watermelon cake. And I sit back now and I'm like, I put people through some ringers just to make it where it was about me, and changed how they had for food because of what I believed I could and could not eat and was trying to control. I did it for family functions. I would bring it up for weddings, and I would really, really try to control my eating and control my thoughts around food by all these diets I would try. I tried at one point as well, diet pills, which I did not take long because of some issues it did with my heart. And I got really scared of those. I tried working out a lot. I like working out, but also my body is not always happy with how I want to work out. So I would remember at one point I was going to the gym 6 days a week, for 3 to 4 hours a day, plus working full time, where I would work, 50 hours a week. And then I was at the gym and I was weighing all my food. I was weighing myself 3 or 4 times a day, taking measurements and all of that, and sending it to a trainer, or a nutritionist to get feedback on that. I paid for so many programs And I didn't have a lot of money at the time, so I was really impacting that pocket, that money that I had, by spending all these money on ways to make myself healthy. And in reality, it really wasn't helping me any. It just helped me learn in my head that there were good food, there was good food, and then there was bad food. There was healthy food, and then there was unhealthy food. And some people that aren't chronic, like I am, and compulsive eater, like I am, them using those terms like healthy or unhealthy is okay. For me, if I hadn't made it clear, I took it to the extreme, and I know some other people in the program we've all taken it to the extreme of, if it's healthy and unhealthy, that thought pattern just drove me basically into massive amounts of depression, anxiety. It drove me to, at times, really dark places. Just all of those thoughts, and it always made me think, I'm trying to be perfect in every way of life, but I can't get my food under control. I can't be perfect there. I can't be this perfect size. I can't get below 215. I don't know why I can't do these things. And I would keep trying to control it by changing, medication I was on, or getting angry at my doctors for not understanding what I was trying to tell them, or not spending enough time with me. It was really, really, when I look back on it now, I was like, man, I was insane with all of this stuff. I was so pushy and so angry at like my endocrinologist for saying things he did to me. I spent so much money trying to prove that I was right instead of listening to the people who were there to take care of me. I haven't ever sat down and actually went back and looked at how much money I spent, because that just seems kind of out there, but I know it's a considerable amount, and I know I hurt my finances by doing so. And I hurt the people around me by demanding things be a certain way. And I used to, because I was single, and I had my own place, and I took like what was coming in and out of my house, and I would always be so prideful that I didn't have certain food in my house. Like, I didn't have Coke in my house. Diet Coke, whatever, Pepsi, whatever you want to call it. I didn't have chips in my house. I didn't have the unhealthy foods that were out there. I didn't use red dye. Like, I would be so prideful that I had that. And in reality, what it was me was trying to control, because I knew if I had it in the house, it wasn't going to be in the house that long. Sometimes I didn't even make it into the house with the food that I told myself I wasn't allowed to have in the house. I was like, if I can have enough not self-will, but self-control, I can control what's in my house. I can control all of these things. And what really ended up happening is I didn't control nothing. I may not have had it in the house, but that didn't mean I didn't go down to the corner store and eat whatever I wanted there, right? Or I waited until I got to work and I would compulsively eat there. And what's funny is I used to think, when I first got into program, or when I first started getting into like trying to figure out my eating habits through therapy and stuff, I always thought it was like I would compulsively eat on like chocolate, cakes, ice cream, whatever, all of those things, right? I soon learned when I got into program, I compulsively ate on anything. I could compulsively eat on Brussels sprouts, lettuce, just as much as smoothies and chocolate. It didn't matter what it was. I could, when I got to that point, would take a bite and I would keep taking that bite. And like I said, when I first started, I came to program through therapy, and I was in therapy because I was actively having struggles with suicidal thought patterns. And I had been using food to try to control my life. I once again failed at keto, which was there, helped everybody else, but I was, a failure, as I would tell myself. So I went to therapy, and, being a therapist, I understood what she was doing. It was not working. I was doing all the things she was saying to do, and it just did not work. All the other times, therapy hadn't worked very long either. I mean, I did hypnosis. I've done pretty much any type of therapy you can think of, I've done. And one of my sessions, she was like, listen, I want you to go to a 12-step group. And I knew about the 12 steps because I worked with addicts at the time. And I had been to many, many different types of fellowships that used the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I knew the steps. I talked about the steps almost on a daily basis within work. So I thought I understood the steps. So I was like, sure, I'll go to it. And it's not like I had never been to a program for any type of eating issues. I had, but I only did it through school. For my master's, we had to go to some of those 12 steps and learn about them, right, as part of our master's degree. And I remember one other time I went on my own and I was just sitting there going, I'm not like these people. They really have issues. They can't control anything. I can still control X, Y, Z. So I was really judgmental of people, and I was not to the point where I was ready. And it took probably 10 years before I ever popped back into a room on my own because I could no longer live. So that was, let me look. So I have it in my big book just in front of me. I'll let you look at that book. I signed this in 2021. So that was probably in September of 2021. And I started meetings on the phone and Zoom. And I went to one every day. I did what I was told to do by my therapist because I didn't know what else to do. I just knew I needed something or I was not going to make it. My depression was so severe that I was on 5 meds, and I was on some of the highest doses of those meds, and I still was not doing well. I was terrified of food. I was afraid to go to the grocery store. I was afraid to drive to work around any places that had food because what if I stopped? What if I stopped and I overindulged or I did all of these things? I was just hurting my body so much by eating incorrectly or correctly or whatever. I was terrified of myself for the first time in my adult life. I had no way out. I had no way. I literally had tried every way and they all failed. And for me, I can just speak for myself. Failure was not an option. I had been taught that failure is not an option. So I fully believed that. And I thought if I couldn't do this, then I had failed. So what was the point? But I also knew therapy could help, being a therapist. So when I found her and she said, go to this program. So I did. I went. And I went to, and I talked to a lot of people. I knew I was supposed to talk to people who were possibly sponsors, would be sponsors. I talked to a lot of them. A lot of the meetings, focused on not eating a certain way or having your trigger foods removed and stuff like that. And I was like, that doesn't work for me though, because I've been doing that. And I couldn't, it didn't make sense to me. It was like, I already know what trigger foods are. It doesn't matter because I don't have any. I will eat anything compulsively, or I will, restrict from things, compulsively, whatever behavior it was. And it just didn't make, food groups or whatever, it didn't make any sense to me. But I was determined to keep going until I could find what I needed. I didn't want to give up on life, and I did not want to give up on me because I knew I was here for a reason. I just didn't know what it was at that point. So I kept going and I kept going, and I ran into this group that used the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to treat our illness of compulsive eating. And the first meeting I went to, I just sat there and cried because I heard people like me make it make sense. And they didn't talk about what foods they couldn't have. They didn't talk about how often, they had issues that day, or how, they worked out or they purged or they did these things or they had these obsessive thoughts or any of those things. But what they talked about was how they got recovered and how they stayed recovered in their, that journey. Right. And it made sense. Even though we're reading out of the big book of AA and it's talking about alcoholism, they made it make sense in regards to like our compulsive eating. I had read the big book of I'm just going to call it big book. I had read parts of it before because of my career. And I thought, like I said, I thought I knew what in the world it meant. I had no idea of how to actually apply those steps. And going to the meetings that use the big book really helped me start seeing how it's applicable to any type of compulsive behaviors. And for me, was my compulsive eating. So kind of like, what did I do? I mean, and everybody that goes into rooms, where, oh, call a sponsor, get a sponsor. I knew that. I knew I was supposed to. I thought when you work the steps, this is what I thought. I was wrong. That when I work the steps, I work them slowly. I work them at my pace. If I'm uncomfortable, we slow down and all of that. And that is not what the big book says to do. So I sat in one of these meetings and heard somebody who had what I wanted. And I like to say that she sounded like home. I was living, I didn't share this before, but I was living in a whole other state that I had moved there for work, and I left behind 13 years of where I lived before, which I call home, and I still plan to call home. And I was very like alone where I was at. I had a boyfriend, but I just worked and had a boyfriend and went home. I didn't have a life like I had before. And hearing that person speak reminded me of the place I had moved from. So it felt like I was home and it was comforting, and I needed that because I was not comfortable in my own skin. I was not comfortable in my own head. I was just literally not a comfortable person. So I got that sponsor. I talked to her on the phone. Probably about 30 minutes or so. She said, "This is what I want you to do." So I ordered my big book off Amazon and I followed her instructions. Sometimes I didn't understand why I had to do it that way, but I was willing to do it because it was either that or I wasn't going to make it. I knew my compulsive eating behaviors would take me out along with my depression. Because they, like I said, would go hand in hand. I knew one of them was going to take me out, and it was either I did this or I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't going to make it. So I followed her, basically do this, be here, show up. So I did. I worked my steps fairly quickly, like the rest of us in CCEA have done. I was terrified of my step 4 and my step 5, especially having to share any of those things about myself. And I thought, you know what? I don't have a lot to share because I was in therapy. Yeah. Therapy did some good, but therapy didn't relieve me of some of the bondage that I still had. I still wanted to blame other people for things. I still wanted to blame my mom for stuff and do all of these things. And step 4 gave me some of the biggest relief I have ever had in my life. It was some of the biggest relief I had ever had in my life. Making amends was another huge relief for me. But the fact that we went through step 4 fairly quickly, I think it was like a week or so. Like I said, it was 3.5 years ago. I can't remember exactly, but like it was about a week. And we went through it so quickly, and it felt like a weight had come off of me. Like I could finally see sunshine instead of seeing everything's in tones of gray and black. Because that's what the world looked like to me. I was finally able to see real life, real colors. And I knew that was just the beginning for me. I knew that I had a lot more work to do to keep what I was given that day from that sponsor at the time. So yeah, I worked my steps really, really quickly. And then I made my amends, and I'm still making amends because we continue to make amends. And then I got to step 10 and step 11 and step 12. And by step 10, I found out that I was recovered, not in recovery, not recovering, recovered. And I didn't, I understood because I was listening to meetings about that. But when I got to that point, I was like, Are they playing with me right now? I just did these things so quick. How am I recovered? Right? It's like, how does that mean I'm recovered? And the big book really, really goes into that about what that is. And I worked my steps. I continued to live in steps 10, 11, and 12. I show up, I help those others that are still suffering every day. And that's how I stay recovered. I don't stay in recovery. I'm not recovering because I did the work. I stay connected to my higher power on a daily basis. And that's how I kind of look at it. Recovering is meaning you're not got there yet. Recovered means you're there and you're staying there. And that's kind of how when I see recovered is how I see it. So working the steps was really, really quickly for me. It was kind of scary, but what is changes, change is going to be scary. But like I said, I had the alternative, either just like going insane, or I had the alternative of doing what other people have done and had worked for them. It's like, what choice do I have at this point? I've failed at everything else. So let me just do this. I'm going to do this. Let's just do this. So I did that really, really quickly. I got recovered, and I've stayed recovered for, like I said, 3.5 years or so. And I will tell you, along those times, along the last 3.5 years, my life has changed dramatically, spiritually mostly. Because that's the main part. And because of that connection to higher power, the rest of my life has changed. Sometimes it wasn't great. The things I didn't like it, but it was a whole lot better than what I came up with or could have come up with or done. I learned, in this process, when I came to it, I thought food was my issue. No, food was just a symptom. Food was what I did to make myself feel good. Food until I didn't feel good. Food was what I did to get away from things. But food was not the issue. Food was not the issue. It was just a solution at the time. So I had to find that new solution. And that's what working the steps gave me on a daily basis. I got a daily reprieve from it. I found that out. And that was kind of eye-opening for me. Because other meetings I'd gone to, they always focused on the food. And I was like, but how am I going to get away from the food? All these thoughts. And coming to this program and with the big book, I learned that, don't make it about the food. It's not about the food. I mean, if we look at the chapters in the big book and it's talking about alcoholism, once you get to the, certain steps, they don't really even talk about it anymore. They talk about the solution of it. And that's the huge thing that really helped me, is finding a solution that wasn't what I wanted, but what was working. And in this process, I have grown spiritually. I was raised, y'all, in church, like many Southern people, because I'm from the South. I was raised in church. I was at church if the doors were open, right? I thought I understood what a relationship with, I'm just say God was, right? I thought I understood, but what changed a lot is whenever things happened in my life and I didn't like it, guess who I didn't want to talk to? Guess who I blamed? I blamed God. So when I came to program, I only could see God as the conceptualize of what I was taught growing up. And I understood who he was and what he was, but I didn't know what he could be for me, or what, I'm just saying but what it actually meant to have a true relationship with a higher power or something bigger than myself. Some people really struggle with turning that over. I knew deep down that I had to do it and that it would work. So I did. I turned that over a lot. The concept of who my higher power is now, and I say God because it's easy, is very much similar to what it was when I was growing up, but it's a bigger conception of it now. It's much stronger. I don't have to rely on myself, because one, I don't want to, because I really screwed that up. But when things are going not great, I have somebody to lean back on, right? When things are going great, I have somebody to lean on. Any part of my life, I know it is what it is because I go through the higher power before I make decisions. If I'm, having a rough day, I'm not going to just sit there and stew in it. I mean, why would I want to do that? I already did that before. I'm going to sit there and reach out to higher power. I'm going to talk to my higher power. I'm going to tell my sponsor if I'm struggling, and then I'm going to go do something. And people are like, does that really work? Yeah, because I haven't had an issue with compulsive eating for 3.5 years. And I lived in that for over 40 years, right? If for 3.5 years, I never thought I could ever do that because I couldn't stay on a diet to save my life more than 30 days, maybe 90 days. I could never stay on anything. I could never be successful. And I'm not successful at this. I'm just recovered and I do it day by day by day. And I know through that process that I will stay recovered. I'll be able to have a good life. And like I said before, my life has changed tremendously, and mostly because of my connection with my higher power. I've moved across the United States. I actually got married, which I didn't think would ever happen in my life because I really wasn't interested in it. I have two great stepchildren. I'm very close to my mom and my dad now. Before, I did not have a relationship I had a relationship, but it was not a healthy relationship. And here's the even cool thing. My relationship with my body and with food is totally different. It took some time. I'm going to be honest here. It took some time, right? And God worked it out. My higher power worked out how I looked at food and as it being good or bad. My sponsor really helped me. My higher power really helped me on rearranging those thoughts, looking at those thoughts instead of those thoughts being reality, which they don't have to be. That he really helped me look at food in a different perspective. I don't weigh myself. I used to weigh myself every single day, more than one time a day. Like, I don't even care now. I get weighed when I go to the doctor. It's not an issue. People are like, oh, did you lose weight since you came in program? I don't know. I can go look at my doctor and say, hey, have I lost any weight? Because it's not important to me. What's important to me is that I show up every day. If the weight comes off, it comes off. If it stays on, it stays on. Because I've lost that obsession of my mind to be perfect, to be focused on the food, to be focused on my weight, to be focused on all of these things. That obsession has really, really gone away. And it took some time for it to happen. It did not happen overnight. Some people have that obsession lifted and automatically. Hold on a second. So I wasn't, that obsession, like, took some time to lift. I just got a bit distracted. Somebody walked in. But it happens. It really does happen. And there were some parts, in my first year, and it's been recently, I've been pulled to different parts of the big book, and a lot of us talk about acceptance, and it's some of us have discussed it, and the whole thing in the big book, acceptance is the answer, or was the answer on page 417. I really had to learn that acceptance isn't, oh, okay, it is what it is. That's not what acceptance is. Acceptance is understanding that things that are happening because they're supposed to be happening. What I need to look at is my perception, what needs to be changed in myself, what my attitudes around it, what my thoughts are. That's what acceptance is. And I mean, acceptance is the answer on page 417 is absolutely fantastic. One to read. I'm talking about, might as well read it. Just give me 1 second. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me, and I can find no serenity until I accept the person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it's supposed to be at this moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake. Until I can accept my compulsive eating, I could not stay sober. Unless I accept life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as what needs to be changed in me and my attitudes. That is one of my favorite parts of the big book. Even to this day, it's so applicable on a daily basis for me. I even thought about just having acceptance tattooed on my hand or my wrist so I can look at it and be, okay, remember this, Jessica, you can't run the show. Higher power runs the show. The outcomes are up to the higher power. We just show up. Other places I'm thinking in the big book that really have come up recently is about health, because it's not like my autoimmune disease and all my other issues just magically disappeared because I got in program. That's delusional if I wanted to think that. But there's this page 133. I am going to read it in the big book. It's talking about health. So it's page 133. Now about health. A body badly burned by alcohol does not often recover overnight, nor do twisted thinking and depression vanish in a twinkling. We are convinced that a spiritual mode of living is the most powerful health restorative. We who have recovered from serious drinking are miracles of mental health, but we have seen remarkable transformation in our bodies. Hardly one of our crowd knows shows any mark of dispensation. So when I read that, because I at one point I was questioning, why is it taking me so long to feel healthy or for my body to catch up and all of these things? And it was in the past year, and I was like, I'm having all these health problems, but what's going on? I'm not doing all of these things. My depression has pretty much been great for 3.5 years, which is uncalled of, because I normally was depressed most of the year. And I was like, but my body is still struggling. And I went and read this. I'm like, I put my body through some hell, straight up. Put my body through hell for about, probably 25 years. It's going to take time for things to heal. And at the end of the day, I just have to accept it. I turn it over when it bothers me, when I'm in pain or whatever's going on. I turn that over. If there's something going on around that, I know it's going to get better. It might not get better in the way I want it to and how quick I want it to, because it's not up to me. It's up to, as long as I turn up every day, I stay connected to my higher power. I show up for other people who are still suffering with this compulsive behavior, and I do those things, it's going to work out. And I can tell you 3.5 years ago, I could never said that. I'd have tried every single way to make it work. But I know, like I said, if I stay connected and I do what I'm supposed to do every day, that it will and can work out. Some days are harder than others. I'm not going to lie. Some days are harder than others. But in the past, like what I would have done in the past, I no longer have to do. I can just jump on to a meeting. I can, go talk to somebody. I can reach out to somebody online on Reddit or whatever. I can go find somebody else that is suffering the way I suffered. I can provide what I received from my first sponsor. And I think that is the absolute beauty of this program. It's simple. Is it easy? No. Is it simple? Absolutely. And if we'll do it, and if we'll show up, and if we're willing, it can and does work. I never thought it would work, but I was willing to believe it could. And that's all it took for me to step into this room. And I remember calling my therapist after a year in program and thanking her for looking outside of therapy, of our profession, and sending me somewhere. She thought, I can't do this for her. We cannot do this. Let me send her somewhere that she can get help and stay alive. And I thanked her for doing that. I thanked her for caring enough about my life when I could not care for my life and did not care about my life, to send me to a program that gave me life. Well, gave me back a life that I didn't know I could actually have. I wake up not always in the greatest mood because I'm not a morning person, but I wake up still happy, still grateful that I'm able to wake up and not be first thing in my head is, can I eat this today? Or is this going to hurt me? Or, what does my body look like? Does it, do I need to go buy this or that? I don't have to wake up like that. My first thought in the morning when the alarm goes off, other than I don't want the alarm to go off, is it's a good day. And then I get in touch with my higher power. I try to connect in any way I can. I have certain things I do every morning to start my day, and being connected, and it talks about that in step 11. I try to connect to my higher power through meditation, and my meditation will look different from other people's meditation. And mine varies throughout the day, varies based on where I am and what's going on. But that's the first thing I know I need to do. I don't want to wait till midday and be like, oh, let me make my connection to higher power. No, because I've already missed how many things because my brain's already been kicked in. My thoughts are all over the place. If I don't connect first thing, then my day just goes kind of down the crapper. One other thing that I just now thought about just popped in. I had my thoughts that were issues, but I also didn't, as a clinician, think feelings. I struggled with understanding feelings, which blows my mind as a therapist that I could do that. And I will tell you, program has really helped me be more in touch with how I feel. I always wanted to stuff how I felt. I didn't feel comfortable feeling anything, even though I felt all the time. We always do. But I had to learn to sit with being okay with how I felt and then turn it over. I couldn't just be like, ah, it's nothing, and brush it off, because it was something. It very much was something. So I had to sit back and be like, all right, we're going to feel what we feel, but we're not going to sit in what we feel. And my sponsor really challenged me for about a year on that. And it took a lot of time for me to get comfortable with how I felt and to be comfortable with feeling, sadness or feeling, fear or anything like that, or anxiety, and not just trying to brush it off. So program really saved me in that aspect of emotions are fine. Feelings are okay. They're not horrible, bad things to run away from. The only thing I know I have to do is I can't sit in them every day, because if I sit in them, it becomes an issue. So program saved my life, and it gave me a life. I have not been depressed in over 3.5 years. And up until program, I was a 1.5 year depression. I said I was on 5 meds. I'm only on 2, which is major for me. But I haven't had a suicidal episode. I haven't been seriously depressed where I needed to be in therapy or anything. Because when I get to those thoughts or whatever, I just turn that crap over. I'm not holding it. Why? I don't want to go back to who I was, because who I am today is so much more able to show up for people instead of just thinking it's all about me, because it's not. And that's what I'm grateful for. The big book has shown me the way to do it and how to do it. And my higher power leads me on that road of how to do it.